All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and you knew this was coming. Gary Antuanne Russell has something to say to Devin Haney, and it sounds a lot like, look, man, come on up to 140 and come get this smoke. And at about this time, the fight is sounding more realistic and more developed than it was in the past. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about two great young fighters. One from the great state of California by way of Vegas, or is it the other way? From Vegas by the way of California, in Devin Haney, the WBC champion, and Gary Antuanne Russell, who has just climbed high in the rankings of, I believe it's the WBC, in his victory yesterday or the day before yesterday against Viktor Postol. Now, before I get into the video though, please let me welcome you again to the channel and say I really do appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the channel. Thank you guys so much. Also, if you're not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. All right, man, I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna have a lot of fun doing this video because this conversation about Gary Antuanne Russell and Devin the Dream Haney has some history to it, and it is a fight that should be made. Now, should it be made right now? I would say no, not right now, for a couple reasons. But before I go into those reasons, Gary Antuanne Russell said, hey, look, man, you can move on up here to 140 and I'm going to knock you out. I think he called them pillow hands a few weeks back. Just yesterday in some interviews, he had said that, talked about what he's going to do at 140 and how he's looking for belts at 140 and how Devin Haney can come get that smoke if Devin Haney wants it. I love it because of all the back and forth that went on between Devin Haney and Gary Russell Jr., right? And if you recall last year, Gary Russell Jr. had called out Terrence Crawford. Devin Haney tells Gary Russell Jr., hey, I got money for you to fight. They go back and forth. They don't make the fight. A whole bunch of people think Devin Haney, that Gary Russell Jr. ducked Devin Haney, right? A whole bunch of people believe that. I'm not one of them, but a whole bunch of people believe it, and the fight never took place, right? You got Gary Russell Jr. now, who has lost his belt at 126 pounds and was really never a serious fight for Devin Haney to begin with, in my opinion. But just fortunately, and fortunate for us, Gary Russell Gary Russell Jr. Sr. made a whole lot of sons that he put in boxing ring. And one of these dudes is right up the alley for Devin Haney, waiting for him at 140 pounds. And that is Gary Antuanne Russell. Gary Antuanne Russell just beat Viktor Postol by knockout. Now, before people in the comment section tell me that it was a BS stoppage, I will acknowledge that that was an early stoppage. I didn't like the stoppage. I'm quite sure that, Viktor Postol could have fought on for a few more minutes and whatever the case was, but it is what it is. He beat Viktor Postol, and now Gary Antuanne Russell is somebody that must be taken serious in the 140-pound division, because the only people that have beaten Viktor Postol have been guys that went on to or have won world championships at 140 and 147. Two of the three guys that beat Viktor Postol went on to become undisputed at 140 pounds, and the other guy held two belts and fought for undisputed in Jose Ramirez, Josh Taylor, and Terrence Crawford. And Gary Antuanne Russell beat Viktor Postol just as easily as any of those other guys did and was the only guy to actually stop Victor Postol, which is not easy to do because Victor Postol is a 6-foot, 140-pound fighter that stays behind a jab, has a very good chin, and does not really engage a lot or give you a lot of openings to really get him. And that's why Terrence Crawford didn't get him out of there. That's why Jose Ramirez, I think Jose Ramirez lost to him, and why Josh Taylor looked so bad. And the only person I think that looked as good against Postol as Gary Antuanne Russell did was Terrence Crawford. Right? So Gary Antuanne Russell is here and is a legitimate contender at 140 pounds, along with the likes of Matisse, of Matisse out of Puerto Rico, Regis Prograis, who's still contending, Jose Ramirez, who's still contending, and all of those belts are about to pop open because Josh Taylor said that he can't make that weight anymore, and he's moving up to 147 pounds. But as far as a fight taking place between Gary Antuanne Russell and Devin Haney, that is a fight that should be made, man, and it could be made soon. Devin Haney's father, Bill Haney, said it. He said at least I'm told that he said it. I didn't actually hear him say this myself, but people that I respect said they heard it on a live stream that he was on. So, hey, man, I'm gonna give it credence, which was that if he doesn't get the fight against George Kambosos, then they're going to move up and start taking fights at 140, and they want to fight Gary Antuanne Russell. And since we all into hey, man, if somebody's going to call you out, if somebody calls you out and you don't fight him, you're a duck. Look, Gary Antuanne Russell said, come on up and fight me, and I'm going to knock you with your pillow fists out. And since it was good, what's good for the goose, good for the gander. If he can fight the little brother, the smaller, older brother, who's coming up from 126 to 135, and Devin's open to that fight, I'm sure Devin ain't got a problem moving up just 5 pounds, not 9, but just 5, to fight Gary Antuanne Russell at 140 pounds. But is that fight likely to happen? I would tell you unabashedly, no way. But if it did, it will be because Devin Haney got some cojones on him. And I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just judging not by Devin Haney and what he does or doesn't do, but what a lot of other fighters would not do. A guy in his position that was a champion at 135 pounds, if he's not able to get that fight for Undisputed, because if he gets a fight for Undisputed with George Kambosos, and there's still a chance that he will, without a doubt, he needs to take that fight, get that Undisputed title, get that record, get that recognition, all of that good stuff. But Devin Haney is not going to be at 135 for a long time. And he said that if he didn't get that fight next, he was going to move up to 140 and fight some fights at 140, some non-title fights at 140. Gary Antuanne Russell, it would sell. If they had that fight in Vegas, all of that beef that took place with Gary Russell Jr. and Devin Haney will transfer right over there to Devin Haney and Gary Antuanne Russell, and we can see that fight. I would say that Devin Haney more than likely, though, has sense and isn't going to take that fight. And it's not because I don't think Devin can win. I just will tell you that the chances are that he will not beat Gary Antuanne Russell. Not from what I saw with Victor Postol. Victor Postol is a good boxer, not as good a boxer as Devin Haney. No doubt about that. Not as good a boxer as Devin Haney, but he is a very, very good boxer and somebody that is very, very difficult to get to. And what I saw with Gary Antuanne Russell, who has now knocked out everybody that he fought, is anytime he laid a glove on a very steel-chinned Victor Postol, he hurt Victor Postol. Now, I agree that the stoppage was premature. However, ain't no doubt in my mind or anybody else's mind how bad he hurt Victor Postol and managed to get his hands on a dude that is very, very difficult to hit. Devin Haney moving up into the 140-pound division from 135 and not having a tremendous amount of punching power, that is a very dangerous fight for him to fight somebody that style, a southpaw that is very aggressive, that is very slippery, that can hit with either hand and knows how to beat boxers, as evidenced by the fact that he beat in the amateurs. He beat Jaron Ennis 3 times in the amateurs. Who else did he beat in the amateurs? He beat Gary Antuanne Russell 3 times, and he beat some other fighter who was really of note at 100, before he made the Olympic team as well. So there you go. I should just say that. Lead with that. He's an Olympic level fighter, got to the quarterfinals, got as far in the Olympics as Errol Spence Jr. has, and very well may be the best of the Russell brothers. It may turn out to be. But so that's a tough fight, man. But here's to me hoping that it happens. I'm sure if Devin moves up there, he will be duty bound to take that fight if that fight is offered to him. And I'm sure he will. I'm not sure he'll do it. I think he'll think better of that and try to get himself a belt, an easier route than getting in there with that guy. Because that's almost like Devin fighting Matisse, the Puerto Rican dude that used to have the color hair up there at 140. Very, very dangerous fights. And I think Devin would probably be smarter to kind of feel himself into that weight class before jumping in there with that kid, especially since he just had that win over Victor Postol, which to me proves that he is a top-level fighter in that division, because that is exactly what Victor Postol is. He is a gatekeeper, but he is the definition of a gatekeeper. If you ain't a top-level fighter, you're not beating him. You got to be able to beat him in order to prove that you are. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.